Okay, let me share my screen. So, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yes.
good. Okay, so hello everyone. It's nice to see you again. I hope you're not bored of me. I've talked a lot in this space. But today I'm going to be talking about some of the limitation of the current publishing system that we have, and what open science can do to alleviate these limitations. So again, I'm Lamis Elkheir. I'm the co-director of the African Reproducibility Network and the training lead, and this is part of a program that's called Open Science Bridges Initiative. So today we'll have an overview of the traditional publishing system so that we're all on the same page. I'm sure that all of you know what we mean by traditional publishing. We'll talk about the challenges in the traditional publishing system and how is open science the way forward. So starting with what is traditional publishing? And by traditional publishing, we mean the conventional method that we have been used to on how things are published, how research findings are vetted, published, and disseminated through journals. So in the traditional publishing system, journals are the the key ruling of everything in the research dissemination comes to the journals. And in this model, what we have is what is known as gatekeepers. And these gatekeepers are the journal editors and the peer reviewers. And these are the person who are supposedly can validate the research and say if this research could be published or not published. So this is what we mean by the traditional publishing model. So as we know, the traditional publishing model have many stages. The first stage is the submission. So you have a manuscript, you submit it to the journal, let's say journal A. After editorial review, if they think that your manuscript is within the scope of the journal, then it's sent to peer reviewers. Then the peer reviewers send comments and suggestions, and then the authors revise the manuscript, resubmit it, then the reviewers go through it again and maybe add some more comments and suggestions. And this is kind of a loop that usually comes and goes for several months. And then finally, again, after the editorial decision whether to publish this article or not, then the final manuscript is published in the journal. And of course, this is the best case scenario, that eventually the manuscript gets published in the journal. However, the worst case scenario is that from the get-go, when you submit your manuscript to the journal, it gets rejected. So Samir, I think I'll give you the host back because some people are joining.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay. So now you're a host. Okay. So this is in the worst case scenario is that from the get-go, the editors don't think that your manuscript is fit to be published in their journal, then you have to go and publish it in another journal, or start the whole process with another journal. Or even after you revise the manuscripts many times, after many back and forth with the reviewers, then the editorial board could again decide that they don't want to publish your journal, and then you have to restart this process all over again with another journal. So this is what we mean by the traditional publishing model. So the way this is made so difficult is justified by the publishing system, is that this is a rigorous process that is supposed to ensure that the quality and integrity of the publication is top-notch. So they say that we do that because we want to ensure that the science that is published is of good quality and good integrity. But we'll come to see that this is not the case, unfortunately. So one of the major challenges in the traditional publishing system is the timeline delays. So as you all know, this whole process takes time. You have to submit. It takes time. The editorial approval takes time. The reviewing takes a lot of time, and again, the editorial decision take time. So all of this is time delays. And some studies estimated that these delays are between 3 months to 2 years. So from the time that a manuscript is submitted until it's accepted, this could take anywhere between 3 months to 2 years, which is a lot of time. And the issue about that is that it hinders the timely communication of research and affect the scientific progress, policy making, and clinical application, and create a bigger potential for scooping. Because while your manuscript is undergoing all of this delay, maybe some of the people within the journal could scoop your idea and do the research and publish it before your final manuscript is published. So there is a high potential for scooping. So for example, this study that looked at 15 journals per discipline, it looked at many disciplines, and it looked at 20 articles per each journal. It found that the total time from submission to publication ranges between 8 to 18 months. So it's not just an issue for a certain type of discipline, it's an issue across all the disciplines. And as you can see, some disciplines are more affected than others. For example, the business and economics are, according to this study, suffer from the longest delays from the time of from the time the article is received until the time the article is published. So again, this is not acceptable. Another study looked at 82 journals from 5 major publishers, which are Nature, PeerJ, PLOS ONE, PNAS, and Science. And it found that 50% of these journals take more than 100 days to publish an article. And in each of these journals, there was at least one or more paper that took close to 600 days to be published. So again, this is just a delay that cannot be justified, to be honest. This is just too much. And what make you wonder about these time delays is that when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, there was a need for rapid dissemination of relevant scientific knowledge. So what happened is that when it came to COVID-19 articles, the time from submission to publication was somehow miraculously cut or decreased by almost 50%. And the peer review time has also been decreased by more than 50%. So this raises a big question. It gives this idea that if the journals want to accelerate this time between submission to publication, they can, but somehow they intentionally choose to make this long and tedious. Because when there was a need, for rapid publication, and journals were sort of competing to publish things about COVID-19, because it's a hot topic, then somehow they were able to increase the rate or reduce the time by more than 50%. So this again raises a lot of questions and red flags. The second thing is the high cost and access barriers. So we know if you want to publish an article, so when you publish a manuscript when the final manuscript is accepted, the author should either pay article processing charges for the journal so that the article is published as open access, meaning that the readers don't have to pay to read this article, but then the author have to pay in order to for them to make their articles open access. Or, and this could range between 3,000 up to $12,000 dollars per article. So in Nature, to publish open access, you need to pay $12,000, which is just a ridiculous amount of money. Or if the author cannot pay the article processing charges, what the journals do is that it asks the reader to pay subscription fees. And these fees could range up to 1 million or millions of dollars per year, especially if it's institutions. You know, sometimes university have to pay subscription fees to journals or publishers so that their the people that work in these institutions could access the articles free of charge. Or if you're not you're part of an institution that has subscription to these publishers, you as the reader will have to pay these subscription fees. So again, this is a big issue because it restricts the access to scientific research and influence where and how research is published. And this brings up the issue of predatory journals, you know, because if you as an author could not pay this huge amount of article processing charges, you fall a prey for predatory journals that offer to publish your article for far less amount of money. So you think, you know, I will pay less and get my articles published, but then eventually this journal is not a real journal, it's a predatory journal. So this practice of high cost encourages actually the thrive of predatory journals. And it's actually a business. It has been found that a total of more than $8 billion were spent on article processing charges between 2019 and 2023, with the revenue being over $5 billion. So just the pure revenue that these publishers or journals had just as a pure revenue was about more than $5 billion US dollars, which is just ridiculous. And as you can see in this chart, from 2019 to 2023, these revenues have been increasing. You know, each year we can see that the revenue is increasing. So this makes you think that these publishers are going to favor quantity over quality, because the more they publish, the more revenue they will get. Few journals will permit zero embargo, which is called green open access. So if, for example, you, the author, published your article in, let's say, in one of these journals, you cannot distribute, even though you have the full version of your article, you cannot distribute this full version, because basically you have sold your copyright to these publishers. And we'll talk a bit about this later on. So again, researchers under pressure to publish turn to more affordable options, which can include predatory journals. And actually, you can see that there is an increase in the number of predatory journals. So more than 4,000 predatory journals listed in the Beals list. This list contains, Beals is a librarian, I think an American librarian, who was tired of the issue of predatory journals. So then he started compiling all the journals and publishers that are predatory. So if you search Beals list, you can find, you know, it's a website that has a lot of predatory journals. So according to this list, more than 4,000 predatory journals increased their number of articles published from 2011 to 2017. So this means that you could correlate, you know, as these big publishers increase their article processing charges, these predatory journals are thriving because more and more authors are looking for more affordable options and unfortunately falling prey to these predatory journals. The third challenge, or the third challenge in traditional publishing, is the retraction of flawed research. So sometime a final manuscript, after it is published, then after many years, sometimes significant errors are discovered in the manuscript. So first of all, this brings me back to one of my first slides, is that the journals say that they made the process of publishing very difficult because they want to be rigorous and they want to ensure the quality of the research that is published. However, more and more, as we go each year, we see more and more manuscripts that have been published that has some significant errors. And again, this puts, a big question marks on the peer review system that is, supposedly should protect us, the readers, from bad science. But apparently this system is not really working. And if, after difficulty, if a manuscript was found to be has significant errors and has to be retracted, the process of retraction is very complex because it needs a lot of investigation. It needs a lot of legal consideration. So it takes time for an article to be retracted after it has been marked as being flawed. And again, of course, the journals are reluctant to do that because this will damage their reputation. If you have more articles that get retracted, this means that you are not doing a good job at filtering bad science from winded up in your journals. So actually, journals will try to delay this as much as possible and try to make it very difficult so that they could retain their reputation. There is also a big issue in linking the retraction notice to the original article. So until this article is taken down, it usually does not have a notice, that say that this article is being investigated and is in the process of being retracted, which makes the reader confused. The readers don't know that there's an issue with this article. This results in the persistence of flawed research that could potentially influence subsequent research and public policy. So if you have research that has problems out there and persistent for a long time, more people will use it to build on them. More researchers will build on these flawed studies, and maybe even policies will be built on these flawed studies. So this is a big problem. So for example, a recent news article in Nature said that only in 2023, more than 10,000 research papers were retracted, which is a new record. So this is an issue, Now, each year we're seeing increasing number of articles being retracted. And this brings me back to what I said earlier, is that the journals now are more about the quantity than the quality, because it is a business. It is a very profitable business. So they care more about the quantity than the quality. And Retraction Watch also, it's a very good website that you could go to. It has a lot of news about the articles that are getting retracted. So, for example, it said that one article took 12 years after it was found that it has an issue, and the researcher that made this article was accused or guilty of misconduct. It took the journal 12 years to retract this article. And this article has been cited 110 times, 60 times since the retraction notice. So again, this brings me back to the problem. The article is out there. There is no notification on this article that this article has an issue and is undergo retraction. So researchers are citing these articles and are using them over and over again. Again, another study looked at 42 of the largest bibliographic databases. And what they found is that more than 4,000 publications were retracted between 1928 and 2011. And these retracted articles were collectively cited more than 41,000 times. So you can just imagine the amount of research that was built on these articles. And actually, this research that was built on this article is also going to be flawed because it was built on flawed and articles that had issues on them. So this is also a big issue. Are there any questions? Please stop me if you have any questions. I cannot really see.
Well, there are no questions in the chat as far as I can see.
Okay, so if there are any questions, just please stop me at any moment.
Okay.
Okay, the fourth major challenge is the restriction of intellectual property and academic freedom. By that, we mean that when finally the author, when finally the manuscript is accepted, the author actually give up the copyright, you give up the copyright of your work to the journal. So authors no longer own the rights to their own work and can no longer freely distribute it. So even though it's your work, it's your article, but now you have sold it or you have gave up in order to have your manuscript published, you have to give up the copyright to the journal. And this is, of course, a very big issue because you did the work, it's your work, and you should be the one free to distribute it the way you want. The fifth challenge is issues with the peer review. So as we said earlier, the peer review process is time consuming. It takes a lot of time and back and forth. There is potential for bias and conflict of interests. For example, let's say you submitted a manuscript and one of the reviewers is working on a similar study than the one you've submitted. So they will have the power to keep delaying your manuscript from being publishing until they publish or he or she publishes their research. So there is a big issue of bias and conflict of interest. And also bias, I think this mainly affects us, researchers in Africa and the Global South, is that usually if like the reviewers could see the authors of the manuscript. So if they can see, for example, all of them are from Africa, then they automatically have this bias that this work is not good enough because it was done in Africa. So this is a bias that does exist among peer reviewers. There is also a lack of transparency and accountability due to anonymity. So you as an author, you don't know the reviewers. So you cannot really, if they did like a really biased or like made a clear conflict of interest, you have no way of holding them accountable because you don't know who they are. So there is a lack of transparency and accountability when it comes to peer review. Again, not all reviewers, I think we've all been there, when you submit a manuscript, you have reviewer one saying that, oh, this article is good to go. Reviewer two have few comments, but then reviewer three have a whole list of comments. There is inconsistency because, for example, maybe the first reviewer just like didn't even read the article and said, okay, let's just publish it. The second reviewer read it like, I don't know, different reviewers will have different engagements, and this will lead to inconsistency in the review itself. And one other major problem is that the peer review system for decades have been dominated mainly by white males. So there was underrepresentation of certain groups, including people, women, people from ethnic minorities, and early career researchers. So I think the idea is that you cannot be a reviewer if you are an early career researcher, which is far from being true, because as an early career researcher, you are the one in the lab, in the field, doing the work. So you're the one who is more up to date with the current trends, current information that is happening in the field. So I think that early career researchers really make excellent peer reviewers. But unfortunately, the peer review system does not account them as possible reviewers. So what this does is this has detrimental effect on the integrity, trust, efficacy, and inclusivity of the scientific publishing. The final issue that I'm going to talk about is the over emphasis on journal impact factor. And this is a big issue, you know. Everyone is now looking to publish in journal with higher impact factors, knowing that actually impact factor is not, like, we can have a whole session about impact factor, but impact factor is not really a good measure. It's not really a good measure that you could judge the publisher or the journal by it. But unfortunately, the journals have used it as a tool in their business, because it is a business, you know, to attract more authors to submit for them, and they make it an excuse for charging more. So they charge more because, you know, they say we are a journal with a high impact factor. So if you want to publish with us and have the privilege of publishing with us, you have to pay more. So the journal impact factor often influences where researchers choose to publish. So what this does is it skews the scientific literature by over-presenting positive results, because those studies that do get published in those high impact factor journals are the positive results. And we all know that negative results are results, and they are important results, as important as the positive results. But what you see is that the positive results are the results that get published in those high impact journal factors, journals with high impact factors. And what does this do is that encourages or prioritizing novelty over rigorous methodology. So what authors or researchers start doing is like manipulating the statistics of their study in order to amplify the results. So, you know, the authors are really just trying to say, oh, I've reached a novel results, without really being rigorous in the methodology or in the analysis of these results. Again, what this does is that researcher will start to prioritize trendy, citable topics over important but less fashionable areas. For example, a disease like mycetoma, we are in the Mycetoma Research Club. It's not a trendy topic, you know, it's not a citable topic. So why would researchers or labs invest time and money conducting research on such, you know, topics that will eventually not be citable and will not be trendy, and will probably journals with high impact factor will not be interested in publishing these articles. So again, what this does is that it distorts the understanding of research and exacerbates the replication crisis. So if you attended my first session about open science, is that what we currently have is a replication crisis, meaning that we have studies, great studies, but if you come and try to repeat or replicate the study, you will not be able to, because unfortunately there has been manipulation in the methodology, manipulation in the analysis of these results, leading to false results that cannot be reproduced. So what this means, like these challenges of the traditional publishing system, what this means is that there's an urgent need for reform. We have to make this better. We have to change this. And this is what open science is trying to do. You know, it's trying to address these issues and trying to reform them. So for example, we have the time delays, the high cost of and access barriers, the challenges of retraction of flawed research. What open science try to promote is the use of preprints, which alleviate all of these three problems. And again, this will need to be a whole topic. There is also the issue of restriction of intellectual property. What open science try to encourage people do is to use open licensing models. And again, this is a whole other topic. Issued with peer review, what open science tries to do is to encourage people to engage in open peer review, which is again a whole another topic. And for the emphasis on journal impact factor, what open science tries to do is encourage the use of alternative metrics or allometrics. And these, for example, I've been in a conference about open science, And in that conference, the Minister of Higher Education of Qatar was there, and he said that they've completely scrapped the journal impact factor and the number of citation. For them, for a researcher to be promoted is by the impact of the research on the country. And this is just brilliant, you know, because this will encourage the researcher to really start looking at issues that are affecting their country, because the more solutions that they get from these issues means that the more they will get promoted and advance in their career. So this is one of the examples for the alternative metrics. So final thought is that the shift towards open science isn't just beneficial, but it is necessary. It is necessary for a more democratic, efficient, and honest scholarly communication system, which is a system that we hope to achieve one day. And by that, I come to the end of my presentation. So I'm open if there are any questions or feedback.
Okay, thank you so much, Lamis, for taking us through the challenges in the current publishing system. And it was really nice. And now the floor is open for any questions and comments. And actually, I myself have multiple questions, but let's take from the floor first, and then I can start.
Sure.
So if you have any questions, just feel free to unmute yourself.
Or maybe you don't agree. Maybe you don't agree that this is an issue. That's completely okay.
I know. Because I've been facing some problems actually with the current publishing system. But let's see if anyone has a comment, and then I could share my story. So Tom, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Lamis. That was a really interesting presentation. Actually, I was just wondering if you could point us in the direction of any resources for looking at the options available for open publication.
Well, what Open Science is trying to do is encourage the use of preprints. So preprints are basically a manuscript, you know, your final manuscript that you, instead of you submitting it to a journal, what you do is you submit it to a preprint server. And there are so many preprint server according to discipline. For example, for the biological science, we have bioRxiv, we have medRxiv, we have engineering archive. You know, each discipline now have a preprint server. So this is what Open Science is trying to do. You know, it's trying to diminish the need for journals to control the publishing system. Because the best option that we have now is to publish open access. But again, to publish open access, it means that the author have to pay a lot of money in order for their article to be open and to be published open access. And in the eyes of Open Science, this is not good enough.
And could you recommend a couple of medical preprint servers?
It would definitely be bioRxiv and medRxiv. bioRxiv and medRxiv. I'll try to quickly give you the link.
That's great, thank you.
You're welcome, yeah. Thank you.
So Lamis, I have a question. When talking about the challenges in retracting flawed research, you said that there is significant errors. So what do you mean by significant errors? Is it an error in the experiment itself, or in the analysis of the results, or what is meant by significant errors?
An error meaning significant error either in the methodology or in the analysis or in the results, or even in the data, because unfortunately, in many of these retracted articles, it has been found that the authors have completely fabricated the data or manipulated it, you know, in order to get their end result, their desired end result. So unfortunately, this is caught on way late after this article has been cited a lot and after whole research projects were built on the finding of this article, but eventually these findings are not true due to errors in methodology or in analysis or in the data itself.
Oh, and then how does open science practices, overcome these problems, problems in the analysis or in the data itself or in the methodology?
Is by making everything open. It's by researchers having to make their data open, having to make their methodologies open, having to, even if, for example, if they used codes for analysis, they have to make it open. When you have these things open, it's very easy for other researchers to access, simply just to take your data and take your analysis code and run this analysis again and see if it's correct or not. And one of the other things that, even because still then scientists could manipulate the data. So what open science encourages people to do is to do pre-registration or pre-registered reports. And in that, it forces, from the very beginning, for example, in pre-registered report, you specifically say how you are going to collect the data. So then you cannot manipulate that later on. So when you have it pre-registered, it is more difficult for you to manipulate it later on.
Okay, because it's open and everyone out there can see what's going on.
Yeah. And the idea of publishing preprints is that preprints are seen like it has been proven. Preprints gain much more visibility. So more people will see your article, more people will, notice if there's an issue in the article, and the preprint server are very quickly or very efficient in retracting such articles from their servers. So this really, try to work around the issue of these flawed articles being lingering out there for a long time.
Okay, thank you. So does anyone has a question or wants to share their story with with the current publication, with the traditional publication system? You can just say it without stating the journal name or these things.
Yeah.
I know that most of people have some stories.
Yeah, especially us, I think in Africa, we suffer a lot from that because again, it comes with the bias, research that comes from Africa, from India, have instantly, the reviewers have that bias that, oh, this research is not of good quality because these researchers don't have advanced infrastructure like in the global north.
Well, talking about India and Africa and, low middle income countries, I remember just having one of my teachers and during my undergraduate studies at university. So whenever we were making literature review and whenever the paper is from India, he just thinks that, okay, these are not
don't use
results. Yeah, don't use
Yeah,
it. And
yeah.
from Africa and then several countries, and I'm not gonna mention the countries. And unfortunately, he once he just he said don't use this paper because the authors were from a country that has a conflict, has a war. So I said no, this is
Yes,
bad.
it cannot be good. Exactly.
It cannot be good. Yes, this cannot be good.
Exactly.
So which
And
is
it's
a
not
bias
fair.
actually. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
unfair. This is unfair.
Exactly.
So regarding the time delays, you said that from 3 months to 2 years. Well, actually, we have a paper, a manuscript that we wrote last September, I think, and we submitted to a journal. And then when we wrote the manuscript, it was about the public health crisis, upon the war in Sudan, the start of the war in Sudan.
Yeah.
So, and I remember we wrote the manuscript and we submitted it to a journal. Then in January, that was in September 2023. So January this year, there were no reviewers actually to review the paper. So we had to withdraw it and submit it to another journal. And now it has been 9 months since the journal,
You submitted.
since we submitted it and we didn't hear anything from the journal. but I somehow recommend it for the rest of the team, just publishing it as a preprint, and we're five in the team. So two of us, me and one of the other colleagues, accepted this. But however, the rest were like, no, let's go with the current system, publishing the manuscript in a journal. And
yeah, because this is the system that people knew for decades, It's always frightening to change a practice, even though that this practice is hurting you. Like, you can really see that this practice is not fair, it is hurting you, but then somehow we're still, because this is how human thinks. This is us being human. We feel more safe sticking to, the risks that we know. We all do that. That's why I think it is a long way, trying to trying really to bring everyone on board, and at least like asking them to be open to the idea of open science, and just try it and see if it works for you or not. But it would take time. Definitely it would take time.
it would take time for people to change. And actually, it has been a year since we were just trying to publish, and now it's outdated because the war now is a year and a half. It's 18 months since it.
Exactly.
So the whole data has changed.
That's the issue. That's the issue. The
Yes.
longer it's delayed, the more like the findings might not be relevant. The data might need update, and it's a big issue. But if from that time it was published as a preprint, I'm pretty sure that it would have been cited even by now, very time. Yeah, and that's the cool thing about preprints. It is citable. It's exactly like an article. It is a citable information. Yeah.
And I just got to know that it gets a DOI. And
Yes, it gets a DOI. Yeah.
So this is great, and it takes a very short time. I think 72 hours or something just to get published.
Yeah, maximum 3 days. And it gets published in the server.
May I just ask another question?
Yes, sure.
So I've just been looking on the two servers, the medRxiv and the bioRxiv servers. And there's at the top of each article, there's a little bar that shows different ways that the article has been reviewed. But looking at most of them, there are lots of 0,0,0,0. Is there any way that if you can encourage people to review your work on in an open access way?
Yes. This is open peer review. So there are a lot of initiatives currently trying to encourage the review of preprints. For example, ASAP Bio, one of the organizations that is, I think, the biggest initiative that is trying to encourage adoption of preprints, have something that's called crowd peer review. So what they do is that usually upon request, or they go to these servers and pick preprints, and then they have crowds depending on the discipline. For example, they have microbiology, biochemistry, they have different discipline, and they have like reviewers in each of these discipline, and they give them the preprint. The crowd reviews this preprint, and then they synthesize this review in a review in another initiative that is called pre-review. So what pre-review does, it's a platform. You can I can send you the link. Pre-review. So pre-review, again, they are trying to encourage open peer review by, they have a system, they have prompts that you can use to review a paper, to review a preprint. And then when you publish the review itself will have a DOI, The review will be linked to the preprint, and the review itself will have a DOI. So the added advantage of that is that for example, for any career researcher or a mid-career researcher, this is something that you could add to your CV, because the experience of reviewing is very important. It's as important as the experience of publishing. So now with peer review, since the reviews themselves have a DOI, you can put these reviews that you've participated in your CV, and and it's even linked to your ORCID ID. It's automatically linked to your ORCID ID. So this is one of the initiatives that are trying to encourage preprint peer review. And yeah, and in peer review, you can go and request that your preprint is get reviewed. They have a way that you could request that.
Thank you.
So
That's really helpful.
That answered your question.
That's perfect. Yeah.
You're welcome. I've posted the link to peer review.
I've just copied it and I'm saving it somewhere. Thank you.
That's good. That's good. You're welcome.
But Lamis, I just have a question. Like, who reviews the preprints? Like, are they experts in the field?
Well, definitely, if you see a preprint that, it has at least to be within your domain. For example, me as a researcher in the biomedical field, I will not go and review a preprint in the physics, for example. It doesn't make sense. So usually it's those within the field, they will be reviewers. But the idea of open peer review is that, everyone is known. The reviewers are known. And the reviewers could be early career researchers, which is a big issue currently in the peer review system. It's dominated mainly by those at the top, professor and moving upwards. These are the reviewers for all the major journals. So because they think that early career researchers are not good reviewers. And as I said, this cannot be far from true, because early career researchers are the one currently doing the research, are the one currently looking at the literature. And again, the open peer review allows anyone from any ethnicity, any nationality to participate in these peer reviews.
Okay, then this is I think this is great, because we as early career researchers, and especially from low-income countries, is that we even face difficulties with publishing itself.
Exactly.
So just
let alone
getting
peer reviewing.
Yeah, let alone peer reviewing is something that's we never think about, actually.
Exactly. We never think about, we never trained on. Even those professors or those currently like dominating the peer review system, I bet you they were not trained on how to peer review. So this is also one of the things that peer review does, is that it offers training, extensive training on how to review, how to be objective, how to, because all of us have biases. Like some of the biases are done unconsciously. So they have really good training in making you trying to pick up these biases and how not making them affect your review. And they also have a very nice document that is very detailed, that has a lot of questions that could guide you through the peer review process. So this is also what they're trying to do. They're trying to train people in how to be peer reviewers, not just leave it, to everyone for their experience on how they learn how to peer review.
Okay, then this is really nice. And I see that big publishing, big journals have been asking for publishing your manuscript as a preprint firstly.
Yes.
And then
yes. Yeah, because they know that they have to keep up. The open science movement is going to dominate sooner or later. So they're trying as much as they can to keep up. So now you have a lot of publishers, a lot of the major publishers like Nature, PLOS, all of these major publishers. I think you might have encountered that if you published an article recently. When you submit your article, they give you an option to publish it as a preprint. So this proves, that preprints are the way forward. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bothered, to include preprints in their workflow of publication. Yeah. And one other thing is that and I think this is going to really change the game, is big funders like Bill and Melinda Gates. Bill and Melinda Gates are one of the largest funders that fund especially biomedical research. And their new policy is that they will not give funding for paying article processing charges. And they mandate that all research that is funded by them to be published as preprints. Because again, they know that, you know, the journal system is just a revenue seeking system, and preprints are as good as publishing. Publishing as a preprint is as good as publishing in a journal. So I think many other funders are going to follow because this is a huge amount of money. If you remember in one of my slides, it's billions, you know, it's billions of dollars that is spent on article processing charges. And this money should have been spent in a better way in doing the research, you know, in
Improving
really
the infrastructure.
improving the infrastructure, doing the research instead of just it being revenue for the journals.
So, and I think that even these big funders like Bill and Melinda Gates, they are encouraging that if they fund your research, you have to follow all of the open science principles, not only publishing as a preprint. And I think they started it this last year or this year. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's I think it's this year. I think it's the beginning of this year because it made a new splash. That now if they fund you, you have to be open in everything. Your data, your methodology, your analysis, everything have to be open.
Well, this is really, really nice. And does anyone has a question or a comment or wants to share their stories with the traditional publishing system? And I know that the traditional publishing system might hinder some people from publishing even their research, and especially for us. And I've seen a lot of my colleagues actually, they do research, but however, due to this system, they just think that publishing is impossible. And especially for us coming from low-income countries, early career researchers, and we cannot afford these fees.
Yeah. And another issue is some of them, and this is from a personal experience. My mother, her PhD, the main paper that she had from her PhD, unfortunately winded up being published in a predatory journal. Because by that time, you know, publishing, you had to pay for the publishers, and those big publishers, like, it was impossible for her to pay. So unfortunately, she fell prey to a predatory journal. So this is one of the big issues that is currently happening. You know, predatory journals are thriving because of this publishing system, because of this revenue-driven publishing system.
And I just highly believe that it might be a high quality research done, and then it ends up in predatory journals. And this is really sad, actually.
Yes, unfortunately. That's the truth. Many really great research has unfortunately been lost in predatory journals.
And then the crowd review for preprints, and I think it's a beacon of hope actually for early career researchers. And then they can, and what pre-review actually are doing is great, is that they train you how to do this peer review, and you just understand how the correct process goes on.
Exactly, yeah, because everyone should be trained on how to peer review. It shouldn't be left to by chance, you know, for you to gain these expertise by chance.
Yes, definitely. So does anyone has a question or a comment? Ala, would you like to add something?
Yeah, just a comment. Thank you so much, Lamis. It is an interesting topic. I really enjoy every time I listen to you, and
Thank you, Ala.
Things in this topic. Thank you so much. And also, I want to share with you my experience last month. We are working on a paper for gene expression, and then we have a paper, we have to rely on it. And then after we search, they have attached Excel sheet for their calculation. And we found the calculation is not inconsistent with what's written in the paper, despite the paper is published in the high impact journal.
Yes.
Yeah.
That says, yeah, that is a big issue. And you've been keen to go and look at that Excel sheet.
Yes.
But you can see how many researchers didn't look at the Excel sheet and just took, you know,
The
the
information.
findings exactly,
Yeah.
the information just from the publication. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
like the authors, or most of us, to be honest, don't
Mhm.
go to the supplementary, don't go to
Yeah,
the supplementary material and look at the Excel sheets. But I think
yeah,
if we do that every time we look at the paper, we're going to find a lot of mistakes. Yeah.
yeah. You are right, because we didn't go to the Excel sheet unless we figured that there is something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And it, like, it was published in a high impact factor journal, so
Yeah.
expect, you know, that they should have a good
Yeah.
and rigorous
Yeah.
filtering
Yeah.
system. But again and again, studies are showing that this is not true. Actually, it's the opposite. The high impact journal are getting more and more sloppy
Ah,
because again, it's a business. They
yeah.
want revenue. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
And it's really nice to know that the globe is currently shifting from depending on the impact factor journals to what impact you've done to the country, and which I think this is why we do research, is to improve the humanity and the people's
Exactly.
lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You shouldn't be valued by the number of publications that you have, nor by where you published. You should be valued by the impact of your
Of your
research
work.
on your community, on your country, on global issues. Yeah.
So then this is really nice, just hearing from people's experiences. Does anyone has a question or a comment or would like to add anything before we wrap up? Because I think it's 6:15 now, my time zone.
Yeah.
And it was scheduled for 1 hour actually. And I know that Lamis, always your sessions, you know, are very interesting and people get engaged.
Thank you, Samira. It's my pleasure.
So does anyone has a question or a comment? So I think we can, you know, our meeting today would come to an end actually. That means, do you have anything to add before we close?
No, just thank you for listening. I know I talk a lot, but thank you for listening and interacting. Thank you very much.
We enjoy your talks actually.
Thank you.
Would like to thank anyone who joined us today. Thank you so much for being here and, you know, getting to our talk and engaging in the discussion. Thank you so much. And till we meet next week. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Bye
Inshallah.
bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Bye
Tom.
bye.
Bye.